All right, so now that we are packaging our project and everything is working without any warnings or issues, we want to start working on the next major feature, which is going to be the wall weapons. Now, this is going to be kind of the leader into what's this guy? I'm a little distracted. Oh, I'm just going to rebuild. Kind of the leader into working on the next system after this, which will be kind of, I believe, I could be wrong on this if I forget, but our points. Because once we implement points, it's going to end up modifying how we handle a little bit of our wall weapon and our barricade purchases. Because right now, where I'm at, it doesn't cost anything to buy the wall weapon, or sorry, to buy the barricade. And same thing, that message doesn't go away until a certain point in time. Okay, we still don't have audio in the soil. I was just curious about that, if that's what it meant by rebuild. So anyhow, I keep getting distracted. To begin, we want to go ahead and make a new Unreal module, and this will be our wall weapon module. So let's press OK. And this is basically going to contain, all the firearms on the wall. If I ever get to this point, the Bowie knife, that kind of stuff. So let's go to our wall weapon module. Let's go to our build.cs, and we can remove slate and slate core, and let's add net core. So we're adding net core so we can do the push model, because I already know ahead of time that we are going to have to do some replication inside of this module. Now this is going to work very similarly to our barricade. So the way the barricade works is we have our barricade actor, and that barricaded actor is defined / built by this barricade data asset here. So pretty much we're just going to be mimicking, for the most part, what is actually done in the barricade actor. So to begin, let's go ahead and we will just make a new actor class, and let's call this under a folder called wall. Let's just do wall weapon, and let's call it, we'll just do wall weapon. So that'll be the name of the actor. We can remove tick and remove the remaining comments that, in my opinion, like I always say, do not really contribute to anything in this context anyways. Okay, so first thing, we know this actor needs to replicate. So B replicates equals true. And that is so when we buy the weapon, we want the weapon to actually visually appear through the wall. So I'm going to have to potentially load up a reference to remember exactly how that works in game, but that's just kind of the route we're going for. We're trying to mimic what the original Call of Duty does. Okay, oh wait, not the barricade. In our wall weapon folder, we want to make as well a new Unreal class, and this will be a primary data asset. Now we will call this one PDA underscore wall weapon, because this will define the wall weapon. Okay. Make a public section, and we pretty much just more or less need to kind of think about what all is going to be going into this. So I'm actually going to load the game up really quick. Alrighty. So what happens when we buy the car off the wall? So first thing first, we need a outline. So we need the decal to represent the outline of the weapon. Then when we buy it, the weapon mesh will appear through the wall. So we need the weapon class to spawn, and we also are going to want the actual decal that basically, or sorry, not the decal, the weapon mesh that kind of represents it. So we need the weapon mesh to push through the wall. We're going to need, do we ever define a cost inside of the barricade yet? Okay, we did. So we're going to want a cost because it has a price. We need a name. So actually we need two costs, one for the weapon, one for the ammo. So weapon plus ammo. We need a weapon name. And I think for now, that is going to be it. We're likely going to need the actual interaction message as well, but I'm not too worried about that. So that'll be kind of like the, where's it at? The interaction message and the alternative interaction message, which will be had for the wall weapons. Okay, next up, we can go ahead and remove the .cpp for the PDA wall weapon. It's just not needed. And start implementing. Okay, first things first, we need the decal that represents the outline of the weapon, the weapon mesh to use, and the weapon class. So, view property, edit anywhere, blueprint read only, and we'll do category. Yes, let's make the category barricade clearly. Wall weapon. Now we want a T, or actually we want a T soft object pointer to the decal. So it is a, what is it? It's not a decal component. Let me actually see what that is really quick. So let me load up the editor and check it out. Okay, so in the pawn, you can add a decal component, and that just takes in a normal material. So decal material. Okay, so it's just a material. So soft object pointer of U material interface. And this will basically just allow us to use materials and material instances. So this will be the decal material. And we need this to be the asset, to utilize the asset bundles. So meta equals asset bundles, and we'll set it to visual. Okay, now we can make a new one, and this will be we'll actually do the weapon mesh. So T object pointer, and in our case, they are going to be skeletal meshes. Sorry, not T object pointer. Why do I keep doing that? Soft object pointer of a U static mesh, and this will be the weapon mesh. Let's add another one. This will be a T soft class pointer, and this will point to the actual weapon class. So A actor, this will be the weapon class. And then lastly, you're going to have a T object pointer, and this one here is going to be a actual object pointer, but it's going to be a U. Let's do just normal data asset, or sorry, U. Would it be a data? Yeah, data asset, and this will be the weapon definition. Okay, so let's go ahead and create one of these in the editor, so we can close this down, compile, relaunch, and just make sure we actually have I want to basically make sure I'm doing this correctly here. But the idea being, actually we don't need the asset bundle for that guy. When you buy the weapon, the server will spawn the weapon class, and then using the interface that is provided by the SKG plugin, we will give it the definition. And that weapon definition will simply construct it. So we can give it the weapon definition of the 1911 STG, whatever you want. So let's go ahead and create that data asset. So PDA underscore wall weapon. And here we have it. So weapon definition, and we have what we want. Okay, that is not entirely correct. Wait, oh, I guess input actions are data assets. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and close down the editor and continue. Okay, so I was actually incorrect here. I want to change this to a U primary data asset, and that'll kind of limit our results when we hit the dropdown. So, for example, anything that we have made uses a primary data asset, so the 1911, Thompson, so on and so forth, those will appear, through here, whereas the input actions will not. So once we have that, we need the cost. So let's do a, let's see, what do we use for the barricade? Was an int? Okay, so we're going to use a int32. This will be the cost, and we'll set it to 0 by default. Then another int32, which will be ammo cost, which again will be 0. Then we just need the weapon name. So let's do a F. Let's see. I think I gave the barricade. Yeah, so we're just going to use F name and call it weapon name. We'll just do F name, weapon name here. Okay, so this for the most part should define our wall weapon. There are some things that we're going to have to add, such as interaction message, that kind of stuff. But once we get to that point, we will work on it. All right, so back to the wall weapon actor. We are pretty much going to be doing, well, the exact same thing as the barricade. So we have an exposed property, which represents the actual barricade data asset. And on construction, we go through, we load that asset into memory. And once that asset has been loaded, we can do things such as set the static mesh components mesh, set it to, however we need to, such as hidden by default. But actually, yeah, that's for the most part actually going to be it inside of the well weapon. Well, with the exception of the actual decal component, because we do need that. Okay, let's make a protected section for our components. U property. Let's do the data asset first. So we'll do edit anywhere. Give it a blueprint read only. Set the category to equal, we'll just call it wall weapon. And then we need the meta to equal expose on spawn and set that to true. So now we have a T object pointer of the type UPDA wall weapon. So we'll forward declare that and call this one, let's just do, let's see, what do we name it here? I'm trying to mimic it. So barricade data. So we're going to do wall weapon data. All right. Once we have that, we can also override the on construction. So let's make that have a implementation for later. All right, cool. So we have this set up. Now we need the components. So U property, visible anywhere. Let's do a blueprint read only. Category equals wall weapon. And we can do a T object pointer. And this will be, let's see, we likely want our decal component. So U decal component. We'll just call it, let's call it actually the wall outline decal component, so we know exactly kind of what it's for. Next up, we want the U skeletal mesh component to represent the weapon mesh. So weapon mesh component. So let's forward declare both of these. So class U skeletal mesh component and class U decal component. Once we have both of those, we can go to the constructor and we want to create a new root component that we can make the other components we just made children of. So we're going to do root component equals create default subobject use scene component. Now we can do, let's see, the decal component, wall outline decal component to equal create default subobject of the type U decal component. And this will be the wall outline decal component. So let's include components decal component and components skeletal mesh component. So we want to set this wall outline up to be a child of the root component. So set up attachment, root component, very simple. And next up, we want the weapon mesh component to equal create default subobject of U skeletal mesh component and call it weapon mesh component. And same thing, weapon mesh component setup attachment to the root component. This way we can manipulate these both individually without them influencing each other. So once we have this, what we want to do is start loading the asset bundles here in the memory. So inside of on construction, we want to check first and see, okay, is the wall weapon data valid? And if it is, we want to grab the U asset manager. We're going to do get, and we need to actually include it. So include engine asset manager.h. And off of here, we want to load primary asset, and the primary asset will be this wall weapon data and get primary asset ID. So also make sure we include our wall weapon data asset. Next up, we have some bundles that we want to load, and in our case, we're only going to have the visual, so I'm not too worried about anything else. So we can just do visual, which will match the name we defined here. So once we have that, we then have the delegate to call. So f streamable delegate, and we can go ahead and find uObject, user object being this, and then the function being a wall weapon on bundles loaded. So we need to make this. So let's head down here. We'll do void on bundles loaded. Okay, let's move this up because I like having it right above where I actually use it. And what am I forgetting? Is it add uObject? No. All right, sorry. We want to use create uObject. All right, so at this point, just like we did with our barricade, if we look at on bundles loaded, what we do is basically just set the static mesh component. However, in our case, we are creating it dynamically here. And because I already know we are only going to have skeletal mesh components, we are for the now just going to kind of have it more or less fixed to, well, a skeletal mesh component. We may at some point want to change this over in the case of, say, doing a viable knife, which would use a static mesh instead. But for now, we're going to leave it as is. So we are pretty much, I'd say, about done. I can't think of anything else other than, well, utilizing the data here. So the first thing, we want the weapon mesh. We're just going to make it visible so we can get things kind of set up and aligned. So if the, wall weapon data, if the weapon mesh dot is valid, we want to go ahead and set the skeletal mesh component, the weapon mesh component. We want to set skeletal mesh, and we want to set that to the wall weapon data weapon mesh dot get. All right, so set skeletal mesh, and this is did I do a static mesh? Yes, I did. Change weapon mesh to U skeletal mesh. That's my bad. And yeah, we should be good. So we're setting the skeletal mesh here. Next up, we want to do the outline. So if the wall weapon data, the decal material, which we could probably rename. So let's rename the decal material to something like weapon outline material. So weapon outline material, can't speak. If that is valid, we grab the decal component. So the wall outline decal component. And let's see, is it set material or is it decal? There is a set material. So set decal material takes in the material interface. So wall weapon data, weapon outline material dot get. And anything else? Nothing else. So we are hopefully good to go. So now that we've done all that, let's go ahead and compile. And I want to check and make sure this actually works. And if it does, I will walk you through everything we have done. Okay, once we are back inside the editor, let's go to our C++ classes, grab the wall weapon module, and we want the wall weapon actor. So as you can see, the decal is currently a wee bit large, so we're going to want to figure out some defaults for it that'll make it easier. So once we've done that, let's go to our zombies folder, and we can go to data assets. So we have barricades, weapons. Let's do wall weapons. And inside of here, miscellaneous, data asset, search for wall, and we have our wall weapon. So this will be the DA underscore. Let's do the STG44. So we want to name this accordingly. So DA underscore wall weapon underscore STG44. So for the weapon outline material, I do not think I actually have those set up yet, but we want the STG44. Weapon class is going to be the firearm, so just normal firearm, and the definition is going to be the DA STG44. Let's save that and set it wherever it may be down here. So wall weapon STG44. Okay, so invalid primary asset. So it did not actually load it into memory because we need to define where, well, basically we need to define this inside of our project settings with the asset manager. So asset manager, let's add a new entry to the primary assets to scan. And we're doing the same thing as the barricade. So PDA wall weapon, name it PDA underscore wall weapon. And then for the actual directory, it's going to be where we have all of our data assets. So we can just copy. There we go, locked up for a second, and paste into the directories. So we save that. Let's reset. And there we go. So we now have the STG, having it applied. So now what we want to do is set up the outline. So let's go to our assets, weapons, STG, art, and we actually do have a material instance for the outline. So I guess I did set those up. Let's open this up and set the STG44 outline like so. And to do that, we also need to, unfortunately, refresh. So let's move this kind of into the wall, and we can see we need to manipulate the decal component because it's, clearly it's a little too small, right? So first thing is we need to rotate like so. And what we can do is, let's see, rotate on the Z by 180. And then we want to scale it way down. So let's divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. Oh wait, these are locked. Yeah, okay. So let's scale it down. And we just kind of want to get it, roughly close. Okay, so we actually need to move you kind of in the wall so we can get a good representation. Grab the decal. And I'd say that's pretty darn close. We want to go a little bit bigger so it's not clipping into the wall. So let's bump this up a smidge. So something kind of like that. So we'll do, 17, then 68, 68. So that'll be kind of our default values. So now we want to set these as the defaults for the actual decal component. So we also, let's see, the width. We can scrunch it up closer to the wall. So let's uncheck that. Okay, that's the wrong axis. So is that. And we want this to be quite skinny. So we'll just do, 4. So that gives us a little bit of headroom to move the actor away from the wall if we need to. Okay, my headphones just made a very loud pop for some reason. That was fun. So we have 4, 68, and 68. So let's set those by default. Go to our constructor, weapon outline component. And we want to set the size. So decal size equals F vector. So we can copy and paste for a visual. So X is going to be 4, then 68, and 68. So that takes care of the decal size. Now we want the location. So wall outline decal component, set relative location. And again, that will be on the X. So F vector 0, 15, I'll do 16.0. And let's see, that is 0.3. Now we want the relative rotation. So set relative rotation. And this will be the pitch, so F rotator. So we need the pitch, which is 0, the yaw, which is 180, and the roll, which is 90. So now we should be good to go. So let's restart the editor here. Let's actually clear all of these defaults. Can't actually remove that. So we'll just remove the actual data asset. So save, close, recompile, and relaunch. And we just want to make sure that the actual values here for the decal component are correct. Okay, once we are back in the editor, you can kind of see already it is basically where we want it. So we have the rotations and everything set by default, the size, all that stuff. So we just want to ever so slightly nudge it. I don't really want to nudge it forwards, but yeah, that's, I'd say, probably good enough. It's just going to be going through the actual weapon a little bit. But if we select the decal, we can also move it back to where it doesn't clip into the weapon itself. So move it back right about there. So that way we have our weapon outline. So we can save, and I would call that pretty much good to go. All right, so that has been a relatively long video, but we accomplished quite a bit, even though we didn't really do much in terms of code. So we have pretty much everything we need. Now we just basically need to be able to buy the wall weapon. So with that said, I will see you in the next video. If you like what I'm doing and you want to help support me, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description below, where you can also get early access to this series.